Welcome everyone to the Chicago Football Connection podcast. I'm your host Steve Letizia. Follow me on Twitter at Steve C. Bears. Joined by my co-host Luke O'Grady. Follow him on Twitter at Luke O'Grady. We got a lot to talk about today. So we are we're a week away from the NFL draft. So we're going to continue our draft coverage. And there have been some rumors coming out today about a lot of different things about who the Texans and the Cardinals might be picking. Big rumor about the Steelers potentially trading up with the Bears has been out there, so we want to talk about that as well. We also just want to do a mock draft, kind of with all of those things in mind. So we're going to go through all of that. We have the mock draft simulator up right now. Yeah, that to stream. We're going to use PFF. So we haven't started it yet because I do want to talk about kind of how for the top of the draft we think might play out, because we can run the simulator, but I think it's better to kind of talk through those first picks so we can kind of get a good idea of who might be there when the Bears are on the clock, because that will obviously shape if they're going to trade down, or if they're going to pick someone. So it sounds like Bryce Young is going to be the Panthers pick at 1. That seems to be the consensus. Vegas is caught up. It's the odds are in his favor. So if Bryce Young goes, now the other report though is that the Texans really wanted Bryce Young and don't love CJ Stroud or Will Levis or Anthony Richardson, so they are trying to trade down or maybe take Will Anderson, which is different than kind of what we're seeing. So
yeah, the line for Will Anderson last week was like, if you bet $100, you would have made 350 if he was the second overall pick, and now he's pretty much dead even with CJ Stroud. Where you bet $100, maybe you make 150 kind of thing, like barely, not even really make double your money back on it. Which I would honestly say that based on like momentum, if they're even right now, it almost probably leans toward Will Anderson. It's like they just don't want to give up the CJ Stroud like point just yet because they've had him in those top 2 picks for a long time.
Right.
But if that's true, man, like what an all-time bag fumble by the Texans.
Yeah,
like,
so
what
true.
A crazy
Not
way
only
for that to play out.
Yeah, not only missing out on the top pick, but then also not, they could have traded with the Bears when they had the chance. They decided not to. And they would have had to give up, really not that much to move up one spot. But the good thing they didn't, because if the Bears did, let's say the Bears did trade with the Texans when they traded with the Panthers, the Bears right now would be stuck at 2 because the Texans are trying to trade out. And no, they've got no takers because the Cardinals are also trying to trade out. Yeah. So I don't think either of those picks get moved because those teams are just going to be kind of competing against each other. And the Colts and the Raiders are just going to be like, hey, we'll just sit back and pick whoever falls to us.
You have to wonder like how much of the Panthers like the apparent love they had for CJ Stroud was like smoke and mirrors. I mean, everyone saw that video of McCown talking with Stroud, and it really did look like that he made some comments about bringing him to Carolina and where he was going to live and things like that. But like you have to think that maybe like the Texans not making a move was like maybe the belief that the team that was going in, like the Panthers, loved Stroud. But man, like if for a franchise that absolutely needs a quarterback, for them to have played this the way that they did, it's just like wow, what a crazy way for this all to fall on against them. I mean, even at the very least, if they don't tell Lovie Smith that they're going to let him go before the game starts, which we know they did, if they at least make him think he's playing for that job spot, maybe he plays it differently and like tries to play for the future. But instead, they let him know before the game, and you have to think that Lovie kind of had him with, "Oh, okay, well, we're going to do everything in our power to make sure we win this game." Then,
oh, definitely, yeah, and thank God he did.
100%. But yeah, as it stands, it looks like it's going to be. Bryce Young at number 1. Obviously, a lot can change in 10 days, but if Bryce Young goes number 1, the feeling now is that the Texans don't love the quarterbacks at that spot. Doesn't look like they'll be drafting one, and because of it, and because it doesn't look like the Cardinals, this whole process have been trying to either take a Will Anderson or draft out of that spot. The teams behind them are saying, we don't need to trade with you guys. We'll leave you guys to draft where you need to pick. Likely, the Colts will have the pick of their litter for their quarterback at the next pick. If by the same merit they don't, it could be that a lot of this class likes Bryce Young and then looks at the next tier of quarterbacks as like their own tier.
Yeah.
But if it would look like the Colts are kind of that next team that make a whole lot of sense, and then
I think the Seahawks and Lions both could be in play for a quarterback, especially.
I think that like good team building, both of those quarterbacks, both of those teams would be teams that should consider a quarterback in that spot. They say that the teams that really do the draft well are the teams that draft a year in the future for that position. So
Right.
the Lions and the Seahawks don't need a quarterback right now, but by the same merit. Are in a position where they can draft a quarterback in this top 5, let them learn on the bench for a year, roll with their Jared Goff or roll with their Geno Smith, and then by the end of that year, see if they have something in the quarterback that they drafted, and if not, maybe they could recoup some value if they wanted to move on from it. Whatever it is, they'll get a good close look at that quarterback in house, and without spoiling them and putting them out. And if he puts bad tape, maybe they would have a harder time recouping their value. But easily both of those teams could take a quarterback, and I don't think anyone would scoff at it.
No, I think not only that, I think it's the right move.
Yeah, we talked about
especially if Anthony Richardson is on the board, that's a perfect guy to sit
take the upside quarterback, exactly, because they have
you still have you still have a first round pick later to get a guy who can contribute this year, and you really set yourself nice in the future. Best case scenario, Jared Goff plays 2 years, and you don't even or Geno Smith, whoever picks him, plays 2 years, and you can let Anthony Richardson sit for 2 years behind them, and then I mean, you got to think the Seahawks and Lions, where they are at with their franchises, they should not be drafted in the top 10 anytime soon.
No, and on top of that, not only does it make a lot of sense for them to take someone like an Anthony Richardson in this position where, maybe there's a higher likelihood that he ends up one of the worst quarterbacks of the bunch, but has the likelihood to be on that upper echelon and has the ceiling that's higher than, definitely higher than a CJ Stroud. I think you can make an argument that Will Levis's ceiling is pretty high as well. But on top of that, those two positions, 5 and 6 now, are really going to pivot the way that the top 10 plays out. I think it makes a lot of sense that the Texans and the Cardinals stay put.
Yeah.
Unless, the Cardinals had fallen in love with Will Anderson. He goes now 2, and the Cardinals maybe trade back and let someone else jump into that 3 spot for a different player.
Yeah. Maybe the Raiders. The Raiders I think would be the only team that would be really in contention to trade up. Unless the Colts, want to get ahead of that and go up to 3, which is possible. But yeah, it does look like, I think if you're betting, I would go Bryce Young, Will Anderson, Tyree Wilson at 1, 2, 3. Assuming the Cardinals keep that spot, you get Will Levis at 4, the quarterback probably. Maybe Anthony Richardson and Jalen Carter at 5 and 6. Kind of you can flip flop those. Both those teams have been connected to Jalen Carter.
Yep.
Stroud falls all the way to 7. In that case, on the Raiders, I take him.
I've heard too that the Raiders quarterback is Levis, and it could be that if he's gone by the time they take that, CJ Stroud could maybe get into a bit of a free fall.
It's possible, yeah. I mean, if both those guys, if the Raiders and Colts both loves Will Levis, one of them isn't going to get them. So let's say the Colts take Will Levis at 4, and maybe at 7 they're not high on CJ Stroud, and they go a different direction. They go with I don't know who they go with, but they don't pick a quarterback. Then you're looking at CJ Stroud being on the board when the Bears are on the clock. Obviously, the Bears aren't going to pick CJ Stroud. But they could trade down for another haul for a team that needs a quarterback. The Titans might just want to move up a little bit to get a quarterback. The Texans might not have CJ Stroud at 2, but maybe they could trade up a little bit and get him there. They might like that value better. Who
knows what the situation will be with the Jets before the draft too? They might say to Aaron Rodgers, "Hey, there's a situation where this falls out, and maybe if they're high on Stroud, if they don't get the deal done, they almost pack up their bags and move on, kind of thing." So I think the way that the Steelers trade has kind of been laid out on the Twitterverse is that they're really high on Carter, and assuming that Jalen Carter could have a bit of a fall. And if the Bears, for whatever reason, aren't really high enough on Carter to take him in that position, they think, we'd rather have a couple kicks of the can as opposed to taking this guy here, then the Steelers would make a lot of sense to come up to 9 in that position. But if Stroud's there, it really opens it up for a lot of teams to come up. Maybe the Buccaneers makes sense. Maybe Washington makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you're trading, let's say it's the Buccaneers, so that's 10 spots. That's basically what the Bears traded up for Justin Fields, and we gave up obviously next year's first. So you're looking at 3 first-round picks next year, which would be incredible. But even with with Washington, that's possible you get a first round pick next year as well. Obviously, the Steelers probably aren't moving up for a quarterback. They just picked Pickett last year, but maybe they have
Pickett came on pretty nicely.
Yeah, but maybe they have Stroud like rated so highly that they're willing to do that. Who knows? But I do want to just talk a little about the Steelers rumors, because that seems to have legit legs. It's coming from like high people. It has been reported as Jalen Carter, which I found was interesting, because I think if Jalen Carter is on the board at 9, the Bears are just going to pick him. That's also been reported. But so my thought is, if this rumor is happening and it's 100% accurate that the Steelers want Carter and they want to trade with the Bears and to get in front of the Eagles most likely, that must mean the Bears think they can get a huge haul, and they'd rather have that huge haul than just Carter. So it'll be interesting to see what we might not never know if it never comes to fruition.
I know.
But
it's funny because I think everybody would agree, like, that 3-tech position is like the engine of the defense that the Bears want to run. The Eberflus 4-3. The Bears have met with Carter now, I think at least two times. They met with him at his pro day, and then they met with him for a top 30 visit. So they're familiar with the situation and the player and the person. If they're trading back, it would be that they've kind of made their decision, because from a value, production, performance standpoint, number 9 is a steal for Jalen Carter. But if it's them trading back there, it's, it's Ryan Poles' first round pick for the Bears. And if he doesn't want to take like a boom or bust prospect, he could trade back with the Steelers, recoup some value, and get into that range, that 17 range, where you let someone, maybe some other people made some funny picks, and someone, like a Jalen Carter that could fall down the board, but not a Jalen Carter, someone like a Paris Johnson or someone like a Darnell Wright could possibly fall to that spot, and then they could really get some value there.
Absolutely, yeah. A guy that they probably would take at 9, that they ended up, falling to 17. That's certainly possible. All right, so let's start the mock.
Do you want to go back and look at the settings and just kind of show them how you had it set up? I think the settings are always good to look at.
Yeah, so I have we're doing 7 rounds. The only thing I changed was I put less draft for need and more care for position value, just slightly.
I think that's
more realistic.
The way of the world too is draft for needs. As of late, analytics have told you that people that are reaching for the players that they need and the positions that they need get stung more often than those that take the best player available, kind of thing. And I feel like the logic around the draft, like we were saying, as of late, has been more that like really, really good teams are drafting for the holes that'll be there the year after. And if you're asking a rookie to come in and be a successful rookie in a position of need, it can happen, but those are where guys will get stung more often than not. So I think bringing down the draft for need value is good. I always, to some extent, will bring the randomness up a little, because I feel like every year there's like a Clelin Ferrell type situation. But other than that, like, I think this looks great, and I think the public versus PFF board is at a good spot where it's PFF is like they're great for their advanced statistics, but the grading system they have is very like efficiency based, and like someone like a Lucas Van Ness will be really, really high because his efficiency is through the roof. But then you don't obviously know, but people should get a good understanding that efficiency goes down as volume goes up, and that'll kind of hurt some of these really, really high ranked PFF people versus people that have had really long like careers in the NCAA. So I think everything there is at a good spot, and with that, I say we kick it off. I guess before we do, though, we probably should, if we're assuming that we're going to do a trade with Steelers here. I've seen a couple different packages about what that could look like. Do you want to just go pick for pick and then see if it makes sense?
Well, let's go over it now, because I think because I've also kind of gone through it a little bit of time. So a trade that makes sense to me. I think if you are trading down to 17, you have to have 32 included.
Yep. Which is funny because that was the Bears pick.
That was the Bears pick that we gave up for Chase Claypool. That's, to me, is such a valuable pick because it's the first pick in the second round.
Yep.
And that pick is traded a lot because you go through the entire first round, everyone knows who they have, who's still on the board, and you have all day on Friday to kind of facilitate a trade. So I think that just having that pick is so valuable. And also just that's, you got it. Steelers have to give up something to move up. And then also, I think so. I had a 17, 32, and 80 for 9 and 53.
Yeah, so I saw that today, and I think that is like I think that's like the value that I think Aaron Lemming tweeted it, and that's a value where like you take like the value draft pick board and you just kind of mix and match what's equal. If you go 17 and 32 straight for 9, it's about a 10% surplus for the Bears. But I will say that if the Steelers are doing it per reports that it's for Jalen Carter, when you're making a trade up for a specific player that you have in mind, especially before like before the draft, saying, "Hey, if he's there, we're going to make this," you can usually ask for a surplus. So I think that either 17, 32, and 9 would make sense. That's probably a little bit more favorable on the Bears side. But if we want to do something that's a little bit more like just tit for tat, we could do the 53 and the 80.
Yeah, I think we should do this realistic. We should not offer this yet. Let's run the simulator and see if Jalen Carter's there,
Right.
and then we can and then if they want to offer a contract, so or a trade proposal. So we'll just start the draft and see where. Oh, we got Anthony Richardson at 1. So that's the randomness. We turned up the randomness a little bit. So in that case, the Texans would go Bryce Young, Anderson there. Okay, so Jalen Carter is on the board.
Yeah,
Jalen Carter's on the board. So we now have to weigh: do we want to take Jalen Carter? Let's see. Are the Steelers technically aren't offering us a trade proposal, but we could trade with them if we wanted to. We could force.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like me and you, if we haven't, then people have seen 100 mock drafts on Bears Twitter about Jalen Carter falling there and then just going from there. I think just for the purposes of where there's smoke, there's fire right now, and in the conversation.
Yeah.
Let's do the Steelers trade and see how it pays out.
Sure. Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, you're right. Both of us, if we're Ryan Poles, we're taking Jalen Carter, but done. That's been done to death. So let's just do that trade. If you look at I have the trade pick calculator up. So in this scenario, it's the Steelers give up 1,730 points. We give up 1,720 points. So it's a very even trade. Very slight surplus for us, but for the most part, that's a pretty even trade. So let's force that because they're not going to accept it since they didn't offer it. But all right, so then now let's presume they ended up picking Christian Gonzalez. So let's see, Jalen Carter 111. So now we're looking at. So we got Kalijah Kancey could possibly be in play. I don't think any of the offensive tackles went. So yeah, we got Paris Johnson and Darnell Wright on the board. Anton Harrison, Brian Versee. I mean, I think in this scenario, the Bears would obviously go with one of the offensive tackles. I think it's really between Johnson and Wright here.
Yeah, I think so too. I would say though that I think value wise, also this week I heard it pronounced Kalijah Kancey. Apparently you don't pronounce the J.
Oh,
I've been butchering that all season.
There's probably so many people that I've been butchering this entire time because you just see it like written down on Twitter and stuff or in like draft guides, and then you hear it announced, and you're like, oh, that's how I've been saying it wrong this entire time.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people think that the Bears, the fit with Paris Johnson at 9 is like a perfect fit. I think if you trade back and recoup a little bit of value like we did and still get Paris Johnson here at 17, the Bears would be ecstatic.
Right.
My only thought is that now that we have that 32 pick, like the first wave of tackles, I think me and you would agree. We have like the Johnson and Darnell Wright in a tier, and then like the next kind of wave of guys in their own tier. I don't think there's any doubt that if we stay at 32, we'll get that next wave. Do you think that there's I think the Bears definitely want to add someone on the defensive line that they believe to be a playmaker at the 17th spot?
Yeah, that's at least, take a look at it. I also think, it's possible that Anton Harrison is there at 32. Maybe not likely, but possible. I don't know if you really want to bank on that, but it is definitely something that could be in play. But if we were looking at defensive linemen, Kalijah Kancey and Brian Versee would probably be the only ones that would be okay in this range. I like Mazi Smith and Gano Benton, but they're consistently mocked lower than that.
And so I think guys that we could consider getting at 32.
Right. So now if we look at the edge position, I really don't think there's great value here. That's Will McDonald. That's too high for me. Same thing with all these other guys. Etimari Adebaware, he's obviously a D tackle. They have him listed as an edge, but I think it's definitely too high for him here, even though he's an intriguing prospect.
Yeah, I think a lot of these guys that we both like probably make more sense at 32. The only other thing I'll say, and we'd have to kind of slow it down and make sure that we jump in when it makes sense, is that Poles has also said that last year he did a lot of trading down and adding a lot of picks, but he has said that if it makes sense this year, the Bears could do a situation where they trade back up. And I think that if they have that 32 value, and we took someone like a Paris Johnson here, and then maybe at like 25, someone that we really like is still there, they could probably they could consider moving 32 and like maybe 80 to come back up into the 20s or something and get someone that they really have their heart set on.
Yeah, it's certainly possible. I don't know who that would be. Maybe if Cansey falls or Bresee. I'm not a huge fan of Bresee, but I think if you can get him at the bottom half of first, that wouldn't be a bad play. But yeah, I just think we can't. I don't think the Bears in this scenario would be able to pass up Paris Johnson.
Nope.
Even though I have Darnell Wright higher than my board, I have no problem with taking Paris Johnson because I think he's got tremendous upside, and I also think he does fit the scheme a little bit better. So, do you want to go Johnson here? I turned down the speed so we can kind of monitor it, and if maybe one of those D tackles is dropping, we can consider training up. So let's.
I think the Kansas go right here to the Lions. Okay.
Bajan, there goes Bresee, Badu Jones. Okay, Kansas went 22. So
Addison maybe off the board, Deonte Banks. Yeah, see, Addison and Deonte Banks off the board are kind of the guys that I would have looked at.
Yeah, I think Zay Flowers is still on the board if we wanted to do that. But I kind of think, I mean, to me, it was like basically cancer or bust what I was thinking.
I was kind of the same. And honestly, I think, too, Zay Flowers would make a whole lot of sense right here to the Cowboys as well.
Yeah, so I think we'll just let it go to 32. I don't think there's anyone.
Yep.
It was a good idea. You never know who's going to fall. Yeah, Zay Flowers. There he is. Cam Smith would have been someone maybe.
Kincaid would have been.
Oh man, Darnell, right?
I know. And I honestly thought about saying that like maybe Darnell Wright could make it to 32 because other than the Bears' interest in it and like in the echo chamber of Bears Twitter, like I know we all love him, but I'd be interested to see how the rest of the league views him because he's had some ups and downs. Like he made it up to like getting mocked to us a couple of times at 9 from some pundits in the space, but when the consensus board came out this week, that was his ranking. He was ranked the 32 ranked candidate on the board. So I thought maybe he could have been there if we sat down, and I thought it could have made sense to maybe take a Kancey there and wait for like a Darnell Wright. And even though the Bears could, when they're mocking this out themselves, could think to themselves, hey, take a Kalijah Kancey there and wait for an Anton Harrison in the space.
I mean, I love Anton Harrison at 32. We're obviously not going to do that now because we just took Paris Johnson. But man, that would be outstanding if you can get him at 32, and then pick a defender or someone at 17 or at 9. Well, at 17 if in this scenario.
Yeah.
But probably not going to go him now. Felix and Uduke Uzoma would be a good pick here. Need an edge. Mozzie Smith's more in play here. Let's go Adetomiwa Adebawore. Let's go position. So if we go to D-line, I think Smith, Keanu Benton.
I know you're high on Keanu Benton, and I honestly don't hate him here either.
No, I don't hate him here either. I don't think he'll get to 61. So if we wanted a D tackle, he would definitely be in play. We could also go with Adebawore, who's a 3 technique, but they just have him listed as an edge here.
Yeah,
if we want to go that way,
he does have that upside.
Yep, he's got the upside. I do think Felix would be a good pick here.
I love Bijan Lowry too. I think he's got one of the more refined pass rushing kits in the class.
We also got to think like who might be available at 61 then. So like Foskey and McGuire might be available at 61. I don't know if I have them much lower than like Felix and Uduke Uzoma. Yep. So it's like, do I want him at 32 or just get one of those guys at 61?
Yep.
So they got to kind of keep that in mind as well. If we go back to D tackle. Like I bent it pretty high. I don't really love the D tackles at that next 61 to 64 pick. Like I don't really like Ika much.
I doubt the Keanu Benton makes it back to us if we go around. I think that being that we've taken the tackle in this space, I think the Bears have some freedom to kind of take best player available for sure at this pick.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's funny. Like if you go to all the players available, I don't know if the Bears would look at Michael Mayer in this spot and say no to him, which I think would make a lot of fans crazy. But I think the Bears probably are in the market to add a tight end in this class.
Yeah, I mean that's interesting. He's definitely been a first round guy. They got obviously Cole Kmet and they signed Robert Tonyan, but I don't think Tonyan really
stops you from signing.
Stops you from taking some if you have him high on your board. It's certainly possible. I wouldn't look. I mean, like you said, I don't think it's drafted like a third.
Yeah, I will say that looking at this though, looking at DeJuan Jones and Anton Harrison being available, and the Bears are absolutely doing what we're doing here, where we're just playing out situations. They probably do look at that. I mean, the fact that Paris Johnson fell, he's probably the number 1 tackle on their board, and getting him at 17 is awesome value. But they probably do look at that 17 spot and say, this is a spot where we could take someone that's elite at like maybe another position and still get a tackle that we think is really sufficient at that 32 spot. We didn't,
Yeah.
live and learn, whatever it is, but I think it's something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of a bummer. I just did one before, and I kind of did this exact same scenario. And Cam Smith was on the board at 32, and I picked him because I think that was a situation where the cornerback that value at 32 for Cam Smith was just too good to pass up. Unfortunately, he's not here now, so I don't know. What do you think?
Corner, see if there's anyone in that corner that we really like.
Yeah, there was Tyreek Stevenson, who is pretty good. Yep. I like him a lot. Julius Brents, that's probably, he'd probably be the only one I consider here. Julius Brents is too raw to take with the top 32 pick. But Stevenson, he's ranked 46. It's probably a little bit lower than I would have him, but I think he's a really good man coverage player and a guy who's been ascending. What about like wide receiver? We could go like a Josh Downs.
I
like too early for Tank Down.
I think, to be honest, for his size and like his build, I have a feeling that the NFL is a little bit lower on him than maybe like perception is, just because if he's going to be that type of player, you want them to be awesome in space. And I honestly am a little bit underwhelmed by his yak. I don't think he's great in space with the ball in his hands, at least how he could be. I think he separates well, but after that, I don't know. I'm not sure if he's the playmaker you'd want at this 32 spot. This was the only other thing I wanted to look at was the interior O-line. And I think, honestly, Steve Avila could be an opportunity here.
Yeah, I think that'd be a really good pick. It's doubling up on offensive line. No one's going to be mad about that. It's you're turning a weakness into a strength if both those guys even become average. And you got to hope they both are better than that. And I think they both will be better than that. So, that's a situation where you get Paris Johnson at left tackle, move Braxton over to right, put Steve Avila. He could play guard or center. So
and he doesn't even really need to come in and be a savior for us. If the Bears decide that they love where he's at, but they like the people in the room already, and he gets some time to sit and get a year of NFL strength conditioning into him and stuff like that, like that's totally fine as well. Like we said, good teams draft for the future and not for need. But I would say that all things considered, it's probably Steve Avila, Adebaware, or maybe Keanu Benton in this spot. All three of those I'd be fine with.
Yeah, so the only thing making me lean towards defensive tackle, either Adebaware or Benton, is that I think the interior offensive line
will have talent value at 60.
Will have some value in the 60s, and same thing with edge, and same thing with corner.
Should we look at the trades being made to us? Because, I don't think that there's ever any capacity for how much he'll trade down.
Yeah, as I mentioned, this is a pick that gets traded a lot because you got all day to kind of work something out. We do have Anton Harrison on the board, who he's the highest rated player. He did kind of drop. So who needs a tackle?
Exactly.
It's hard to say who we don't know who people
that are interested in trading with us.
So we got the Colts, Seahawks, Jets, Falcons, Bengals, and Vikings. The Bengals and Vikings are probably way too low. You're not trading that far back.
I think your screen here might be frozen.
It is.
I haven't seen you click open the Colts.
There you go. Okay, so it's not when I click on the drop down, it's not showing up, but it does show up. So it's the Colts, Seahawks, Jets, and Falcons are off.
What are their numbers?
The Colts at 35, Seahawks at 37, Jets at 42, Falcons at 44. So I'm thinking probably the Colts is Seahawks because then you're trading down, but you're still keeping that top. Top 35 pick ish.
So let's go to 37.
Yeah, the Seahawks. So Seahawks, if they do 32, let's see, 52, we're not going to be accepted. We can get 83, not very high.
But we could. What if we did we'll give you 32 and 80 for 37 and 52.
And it's not really. 45%. That's too low. I don't think they'd accept that.
Well, let's tell you what. Let's give them the offer. If they don't want it, we could take a similar offer to the Colts or something.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I just don't think that's a realistic offer. So they might accept it in the simulator, but I don't know if it's realistic.
All right. Well, then let's maybe look back at the Jets.
If we do. Oops. So we could do 35 and 106 for 32. You just trade back 3 spots, get a borderline top 100 pick. I don't hate that.
What about 32 and 103 for 35 and 79?
Okay, wait. Okay, let's see. 71%, so it's reasonable. I almost in that situation would just prefer getting the extra pick though.
Okay.
I don't love trading down and not getting any additional picks.
Yep.
Like,
Okay.
so I think that's fair. They'll probably let's
Yeah,
do
we
that.
only jumped down 3 spots, and honestly,
Yeah.
like I said, to some extent, when we have 3 or 4 players that we were saying are okay at this spot, we kind of just let the board fall to us.
Right. So Mayer, Jones, Adebaware. So that's someone we were considering.
Man, Anton
So
still there.
Free fall. All right. So like I said, I think the center value and interior offensive line value is going to be there at 61. I don't think it's there on D line.
Want to go
I think we
Keanu
can go
Benton?
Mozzie Smith or Keanu Benton. I'd be fine with.
I know you're high on Keanu Benton, and I wasn't as high on Mozzie Smith as I think some people are. I found that
Okay.
for a guy that's supposed to be like this big, block eater, I felt that when he got double teamed, he kind of got erased. And I had my concerns about if you're going to do that in the NFL. Like, I mean, if you're going to do that in college, you're probably going to have a hard time in the NFL as well.
All right. So you want to go Benton then?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. I'm going to speed this up because I don't think we're going to be trading up anytime soon. I didn't even see what Anton Harrison went. John Michael Smith just went. Maybe I was wrong about the interior offensive line. Oh no, we got 2 good options here. So
Yeah, and honestly,
either one of those guys.
We have 64 too, so like I think you can probably wait on it. You probably won't see both centers go.
That's a good point. It's okay. So let's see who else is there. So just kind of the best players. We're not picking a quarterback or a linebacker. Thule's a bit of a tweener. I don't love him very much. Too high for Dell. Brents could be possibly in play. Get a cornerback. I don't hate that. Same thing with Garrett Williams. I actually really like Zach Charbonnet. I know, people probably aren't high on drafting a running back this high, but I think there aren't a lot of running backs in this draft class. There are a lot of good running backs in this draft class, but I would say there's not a lot of running backs who are both threats as a receiver and as a runner.
I know.
It's kind of like you get guys who do one really well, but not both. And I think Charbonnet is like one of the last running backs here, besides the top guys, who kind of gives you both. So I don't hate that at all. McGuire, probably a little high for him.
Yeah, I mean, I would lean toward like a Julius Brents here. He's a freak athlete. I think there has been some ties. He got mocked to the Bears on the Athletic. Dane Brugler's full mock draft today, and a lot of that usually comes with some insight from Dane in those situations. He had an awesome Senior Bowl. He's probably one of the best athletes in the class. I think if we get him at 61 here, it adds really, really nice competition to a position that's still a bit of a question mark with the Bears.
All right, let's do it. Let's do that, and then just take Whippler or Tippmann, who's ever there at 64. Hopefully, at least one of them. Okay, so Tippmann went, so that makes it easy.
Make our decision easy because me and you actually, those are like, me and you are both like, Tippmann's your top center, if not for John Michael Schmitz, and Whippler is my top center. So as it plays out, we're going to get my top center here. I think that's a great choice.
Yeah, and I think that's really good value. So I love that. I like that a lot. So now we got 2 offensive linemen. We have a defensive tackle, and we have a cornerback.
Yeah.
And we still have a pick at 80 here, so which is really nice. So Zach Charbonnet went 78. If he was on the board, I would have been pounding the table for him. Just kind of seeing who. Kayshon Boutte at 73.
Oof.
A little high.
I know.
Ooh, Zach Harrison, our guy, went.
I know.
Nice pick here.
It looked like Blake Freeland did as well.
All right, so
just scroll through the best available.
Best available, okay. Garrett, we just took a cornerback, but I guess you could probably take 2. Oh, Ika's on a free fall a little bit. Michael Wilson, this might be kind of where he starts to get into play. Chandler Zavala, that'd be a 3rd offensive lineman. I don't know about that. Isaiah McGuire, I actually really like here.
Yep, I do too.
We did our edge rankings, and I didn't have him in my top 10, and I want to go back and update it because I actually really like Isaiah McGuire.
Should we see now? DeWayne McBride is a guy that if he's there at 103, I think we take.
So DeWayne McBride, I like, but he had less than like 10 receptions.
No, I know he has no opportunities, and it's hard.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was saying about there are guys who do. He's a really good runner of the football, but we already got 2 good runners of football who can't catch. I just think he's too redundant. But I mean, if he is there at 103, definitely have to consider it. But I wouldn't take him here.
I think when the offseason started, the Bears had a bigger need at running back than they do. I think to some extent, if they don't add a young running back right now, they can do that for a draft, and that's fine. Because they also added Travis Homer, who I think is a good 3rd down back.
That's true. Yeah, I think with the guys who are on the board, I'm fine with taking a running back maybe in that like 130, 140 range, but not here. I think Michael Wilson actually would
Michael
be pretty
Wilson makes some
good.
sense. Nate Dell, this spot is like I feel like people have him free falling all the time because of it.
Yeah.
Let me actually bring up my wide receiver rankings.
I also really like Tyler Scott and Marvin Mims. We'll probably get them later if we want at the next pick if we wanted. Same thing with Jaden Reed.
Yeah, so
We haven't drafted an edge player yet, though.
no, yeah, and I think
it's starting to
Isaiah
be a little
McGuire,
slim
Isaiah
pickings
McGuire is
here.
kind of staring us in the face, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, mostly because I don't really like any of these players.
I think that,
I mean, like there's some guys like Jose Ramirez, Yaya Diaby. Those are intriguing guys,
but
I
those are
think
more
if
like
you're
fifth round flyers.
yeah,
And like,
if you want a
man,
guy who's
I actually do like Nick Herbig. I think like there's something to be
Yeah.
said about those guys that are a little undersized have had better success in the NFL like in the last couple of years. It says he's 240,
Yeah.
but I honestly think he might even come in under that.
yeah,
And like maybe he's a guy that you won't honestly ask to rush from the inside position, but our linebacker spots are pretty well locked up.
yeah. I view him more as an inside linebacker.
I just don't think he makes the most sense in the world there. And
yeah,
I think Carl Brooks has probably taken a fall in a lot of people's eyes in the last little bit.
Yeah.
If he's there at 103, I don't mind us going back-to-back edge and just adding some competition to that room. I think Isaiah McGuire. I think Isaiah McGuire is the pick here for me.
Yeah, I think so too. That was I think he was pretty obvious the pick for me because I really like him a lot, and I think he's super long, better athletic, more athletic than like the tape maybe might suggest. So I think they're gonna like him. All right, so Dwayne McBride is there.
You got 103 and 106. So looking at it here, you probably like pair two in your mind that you like. Nick Herbig still being there is tough, man. Because like his tape is really, really fun, man.
It is, but yeah.
And he tested as an elite athlete. Do you want to go? Yeah. Do you want to go? Do you want to go Brooks here? His tape is awesome, and he'll probably kick inside at the NFL level just the way that he tested.
Yeah, I mean you're much higher up Brooks than I am.
Actually, seeing Wanya Morris there is like, I really
that's not a bad pick.
A good flyer.
I like that.
Just basically,
I like that.
Supplementing your Paris Johnson pick, giving yourself a little bit of flexibility. Chandler Zavala.
That'd be a good one.
Yeah, 100%. He's been a bit of a late riser. I think if you got him in the 6th round, a couple of even last month, you'd have been happy. But he's really moved up the boards, and as he probably should have. Man, the defensive tackle, there's still a couple really nice ones on the board. Ajomo and
this is a good range for it.
My top 10.
Yeah, though this is a good range. Darius Rush would be another. We picked a corner, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. We took Julius Brents.
That's right. Okay, but
although I do love Darius Rush's tape.
Yeah, I do.
Eli Rick's still on the board. I love Eli Rick.
I think this is really like the sweet spot of the draft. There's some really good players here. Tyler Scott. We haven't drafted wide receiver. Tyler Scott would be really nice.
And there was a big runner receiver. Like the last 9 or 10 picks I saw was like all kind of the guys that were in that space. We could go. I mean, we should probably find out who we like here at 103 first.
Yeah.
I would say we either go, Zavala or double up and take Wanya Morris.
We could. Yeah, let's go Morris. Let's go Morris.
The thought on like a Jomo or Turner is that they probably both won't go, and then at 106 we can make that decision.
Yeah, let's go Morris because I think he would be a really good swing tackle. And I think that might be his ceiling, but I think that's not bad to get.
And it doesn't just hand Paris Johnson the job. It makes it so that now you have 3 possibly adequate tackles if you consider who was starting for us last year.
Larry Borum.
If Borum, if you end up having to have Borum go there, it's not the end of the world. I mean, you really rather avoid it, and it likely will be Paris Johnson, but it adds some competition to the room.
Yeah, I like that pick. I like the idea of drafting 2 tackles in this class. And getting a guy like Morris, whose best football is probably ahead of him. So he doesn't have to play right away, but he can be a swing tackle. If someone goes down, he can get some reps. Not kill you. Hopefully,
he could also kick inside.
Yeah. Get your 5 best out there.
Yep. Okay.
So now we're looking at. I think we probably want to adjust wide receiver here soon, either at this pick or the next one. That being said, we should reach just to do that. Running back would be in play. We can also go back to the defensive line, like Moro Jomo. I think would be a good pick here.
100%. Go to the
I wouldn't
defensive
hate that at all.
tackle room. If we theoretically missed out on Turner and Ajomo, is there anyone else left that we really like?
I like Jalen Roy as a nose tackle. Jalen Redmond I like a
You can
lot, but
take a late
that's
round flyer on. Same with Dejwaj
yeah.
Johnson, honestly. His tape, Tommy
Yeah.
turned me on to him. Honestly, I thought his tape was really, really nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I did too. So those are guys like later on.
Then if we don't find Turner or Ajomo there at 33, we could probably take one of those guys.
What about let's go to wide receiver.
Yeah,
Tyler
I love
Scott,
Tyler
Trey
Scott.
Quinn.
I think he. I mean, to be honest, Parker Washington has fallen down a lot of people's boards in the last little bit, and I don't
I know,
think.
yeah, you've been high on him for a while.
I'm not extremely high on him, but like for example, I had a higher grade on him than I had on Keishon Butte.
Oh
And,
yeah,
like,
for sure.
He went in the second round on this. I only had him like just below Rashee Rice. I had him just below Jalen Hyatt. So, but it looks like honestly, based on the rankings here, he might still be there. Tyler Scott is the exact opposite. I thought he's been on the move upwards. I think he has really soft hands for a guy that you really are only taking to be a freak athlete. He's one of the fastest players in the draft.
Yeah.
I'd be fine taking Tyler Scott here.
Yeah, I really like Tyler Scott. I just watched him recently, and I'm glad I did because he is in my top 10 now for wide receivers.
Yep.
And like you said, fast, better route runner. I think that he's probably given credit for. And like to be honest, I don't know what Jalen Hyatt does better than Tyler Scott.
Seriously. And at least like Tyler Scott had a bigger breadth of work where you can see some other stuff around him. Like Jalen Hyatt is all a projection of what he might be.
Right. So I you cool with Tyler Scott here?
Totally.
Let's do it. All right. So now with hopefully I'm really hoping
Redmond just went. That's crazy.
Oh wow. That's that randomness. Hopefully Ojomo just went too.
Ojomo and Turner. Chandler Zavia still there though. At this point, I'm happy just to take him and keep taking shots at the offensive line.
Yeah, that's
we haven't taken a guard.
I mean, let's just take like a quick look, but yeah. That's definitely
Ivan Pace is another guy that's kind of
yeah.
Ivan Pace is a guy that's kind of Roshan Johnson. Wow.
That'd be a good one too.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we're taking a receiver here, he played behind Bijan Robinson, but there, Deuce Vaughn too, though, man.
Yeah, I mean, he's so small, but like I just
here's
love
the thing, right?
him.
We do pick again in 3 picks.
Yeah.
So if there's 2 maybe that we like, let's find a position where we feel like after this pick there's be some issues.
Yeah, let's go with Zavala. This is just an absolute steal at this point.
Yep,
so let's just take best player available, and then we'll if we miss out on the running backs, who cares? Both the running backs are still there.
If they're both still there, they'll probably still have one there in 12 picks.
Let's just take a quick look at tight end because we didn't take one earlier.
Yeah,
Zach Kuntz just went.
Will Mallory, I think.
Will Mallory later
and
on.
Josh Weil, both kind of those guys that are good like complements to a Kmet, where they're faster, more like slot offline tight ends.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what they would want to get
to add
because they have Kmet and they have Tanyan, who are both more inline guys, which like Schoonmaker's kind of along that same line too. He's not super athletic, he's a good player and I like him, but I just don't know if he's the receiving threat. So yeah, I think Mallory later on could make a lot of sense. He's basically a receiver, essentially, just a big receiver. So Kendre Miller, this is probably a good spot to pick a running back. Kendre Miller, Sean Tucker, Deuce Vaughn, Roshan Johnson are all good players who could be in play here. If we didn't pick 4 offensive linemen already, Nick Saldiveri would be a really good option here. Jose Ramirez is a pass rusher that I like. Caillou Blue Kelly if we want to double dip on corners.
Starling Thomas if you want to dip on corners. Jacorian Bennett if you want to do it. Carter Warren still there. So a bunch of really good players still available. Wow. 148 will be a really, really nice pick for us.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be fine with going Roshan Johnson here. I think he's my favorite of the guys still available. I was saying that Ivan Pace and Viliami Fehoko are 2 guys that I think are interesting pass rushers. I think they're more like they're kind of upside athlete pass rushers. They're awesome tape, but the level of competition isn't as high.
Yeah, and Pace is real undersized. And
he's kind of.
I agree that they're intriguing guys, but to me, I'd rather just get Roshan.
He kind of gives me Herbig vibes. I think he's honestly, I would say that he's a better off ball linebacker than Herbig. Like I think if
Yes.
you had to draft him to just be a cover linebacker, that's fine. But what he's shown as a pass rusher is pretty like nuanced
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah,
It's
I see him. Yeah, he's definitely an inside linebacker for me, and I see him in a scheme that asks their inside linebackers to blitz a lot. So
Yep.
not sure if that's really good. What the Bears want,
I don't
because
think so
he's
either.
not really that great in coverage. So most of the time on third down, he was just blitzing. But I do think, yeah, his tape is fun to watch. And I think he's going to be a good player.
Yeah, he was like a 9.5 RAS as well.
Yeah, but I like Roschon Johnson here.
I think Roschon Johnson of the guys left probably have the most upside as that blocking receiving back.
Right, because I mean, like you said, like I said earlier, there's not a lot of guys who do everything well. Like Deuce Vaughn's probably just a third down scat back. Tucker and Miller are more first down runners rather than receivers. Even though they're not terrible receivers, but they're not great. Roschon Johnson, I think, is like kind of do it all kind of guy.
Yep. I will say that someone's going to draft. Someone will draft. Carter Warren and Nick Sullivan on. That's fine. We already took our shots at tackle.
We got plenty of offensive linemen.
I will say that Deuce Vaughn is going to make someone happy. I think that he kind of checks the boxes of the things you want out of a college running back. He had really good speed. Yeah. He has a good breakaway percentage, which is like if you score in that top 5 of the breakaway percentage in the nation, like you almost always translate to a good NFL runner.
Yeah.
But he is small, man.
He's so small. All right. So Corey Trice, we're probably not going to pick him because we just picked a corner, but it's just funny that to me, he is very, very similar to Julius Brents. Like if you don't, I would almost rather have Corey Trice in round, what are we in, 5,
from a value point of view? Yeah.
Than Julius Brents at where we picked him from a value perspective. But yeah, they're both like 6'3", super athletic, raw cornerbacks. So if we didn't have one already, maybe he would be in play. Fahal goes to there. If you wanted to go that route, I prefer Jose. I prefer Jose Ramirez, but we can go. If we just want to draft a pass rusher, that's fine.
I don't know. I actually probably haven't watched Jose Ramirez. I might have to add him to the list of dudes still to watch.
You should definitely add him to the list.
Okay, I would say that if we took an edge rusher here would actually make a lot of sense. Just in that, it's something that we need a lot of help at, and we've really only taken one swing at so far. So if you want to go Ramirez here, I'd be fine with that.
Okay, let's do it.
Yeah, at this point, it's just value, right? It looks like Yaya Diaby already went, which is funny because everyone near the draft, Yasir Abdullah was the guy that people were talking about from there, and now he might have even usurped him in that spot just from upside point of view.
For sure,
his bend is crazy. He really is fun to watch.
Yeah. Wow, without a pick. Yeah, but no, I think Jose Ramirez is really good. He's a really good pass rusher. Tommy and I were talking about him not too long ago, and probably never going to be a 3-down edge, but a guy who can rush. He can get off. He can get after the quarterback, and I think he'll be able to do it in the NFL too. At least get you be a rotational edge player. All right, so now we're at 218, so we're pretty far down here. Bryce Ford Wheaton is an intriguing guy with height, weight, speed, wide receiver.
Abdullah is still there, which is funny.
Yeah, another guy who's undersized though, so it wouldn't surprise me if he's. Those are the guys that drop. That guys who are undersized who maybe not will be off a lot of teams' boards completely.
Dorian Thompson-Robinson, as far as we did sign someone that makes a lot of sense as Justin Fields' backup, but that's a guy that you've seen linked to the Bears just from a scheme fit a lot of the time.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I watched Thompson-Robinson, and he's awful. I think he's perfect. I think he's one of the worst quarterbacks I've ever seen.
I haven't watched any quarterbacks in this class aside from the clip we've seen from the top guys, just because. Oh, Jake Andrews is there.
Yep, I like Jake Andrews. I also like Clayton too. I have not watched a lot of quarterbacks, but I did watch Clayton too.
Thomas and Coombe is I think
is another good pass rusher. O'Shawn Mathis is another guy I like too. In Coombe, Anthony Bradford's another good offensive lineman. I almost like these end of the guys.
Oh man, Brett Nealon there. So I love Brett Nealon's tape. He's old and he's coming off of an injury. I think he's probably 25, but from a performing. In an awesome way against the best competition in the nation. And for the things that we saw on those Bears videos of the things that they value at center, I think he makes so much sense. The only problem is based on when he got injured and the recovery thing, he might might make it to be able to play end of July, beginning of August. But as a guy that you could stash and then say, hey, he can compete next year against maybe a Weipler thing he could make sense.
Yeah, no, I think that would be for sure.
He probably makes more sense as like an undrafted target. Unfortunately, that's just kind of how the way the world works.
Yeah, the injury and the age make him probably most likely an undrafted guy, but he's definitely an undrafted guy who
he would be like
could
one
make
of a premium undrafted guy because he could
right.
still definitely play in 2023.
Right. Yeah. But it would also be tough for him to make a roster though if he's not playing. But maybe he can get stashed on IR for a team for a year. All right. Where do we want to go here?
The Josh Weiler's still there, who we talked about.
Yeah.
He's a guy that's that one of those faster
Let's see.
Tight ends in that space. We haven't
Did Will
taken the tight
Mallory
end
go?
yet either.
Okay, so Will Mallory. Yeah. Do you want to take him?
Yeah, I think he makes sense. Again, at this point, it's best player available, and it's also positions that you'd like to add competition to.
For sure.
Elijah Higgins.
All right, last pick.
Player, I think.
All right.
What do we got?
So we can go a lot of different here. Jake Andrews, I really like. Thomas Incoom.
Desjuan
Johnson. If you really want to go Brett Nealon, I'm fine with that. If we want to do that here,
I think he makes sense as a guy to target with your first call once the draft is over.
Okay.
I think Incoom's tape is fun enough that you take a flyer on him for the same reason that you take a flyer on Yaya Diaby. If he only comes in on third downs a couple of times a year, I think he has like the speed and the bend to give some people some issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, probably one of the higher pass rush rates, higher run stop rates that you see. Already a good run defender. So yeah, do you want to pick him?
If it wasn't him, I mean, we could look at Desjuan Johnson. Again, it's one of those things. Both of these guys, it's the level of competition that they play. But I think Desjuan Johnson, like, if you haven't given him a look, he's a little undersized. I think he probably makes more sense as like an edge for the Bears.
Yeah.
But he tested like a good athlete, and like all you can ask for it as a smaller school guy is to dominate the people they're playing against, and I think he did.
It's true. Yeah, I mean he's a bit of a tweener, but we're talking about the 258th pick in the draft here, so there are no wrong answers. Like,
the other thing too is a lot of the guys that we're thinking about here probably won't get drafted that we're considering. Yeah. So you might not miss out on a Thomas Incoom if you take a Desjuan Johnson. It really just depends on how the phone calls go after the draft. Right. This will be the first time in my life as a Bears fan that I'll be like readily like aware of like the guys that are getting into free agency. It might just be because, for years and years and years, the Bears have like sewered themselves with draft picks and like left themselves with so little that it almost just didn't make sense to do as much like digging as like I have this year. But there should be a lot of good opportunities once free agency comes around.
For sure. Yeah, I think a guy like Brett Nealon would be definitely in play.
A guy like Jake Andrews would be. I mean, if we didn't take a white player and a Zavala already, like I think he makes a lot of sense. But as far as like just trying to fill out a roster, I would say an edge or a defensive interior makes the most sense here.
Okay. Do you want Incoom or Johnson?
Let's go Johnson.
Okay. All right. So let's see what the PFF gives us for a grade. Got an A for Paris Johnson and Branson. Ooh, I think we're gonna get pretty high grade. A grade. Looks pretty good.
Yes, sir. Bunch of really good athletes in the back half of this draft. I like that, if we weren't able to address edge until the third, and that's definitely a need in the team. But before the draft was out, we took another kick at the can, which was nice.
Yeah.
We got the defensive interior. We took a couple of shots at. The thing that's nice about the way that the Bears have addressed receiver with DJ Moore is that just taking a Tyler Scott in the fourth is really all they need to do in the draft situation to make sure that room is like where it needs to be for the season.
Yeah, exactly.
Roschon Johnson in the fifth too, man.
Yeah, that's a steal. I mean, I'd be perfectly fine with this draft. There may be some things I would have done maybe a little bit differently if I had to do it again, but I would be more than okay with this draft.
Whiteburn Morris and Paris Johnson too, being able to get Julius Brents and Keanu Benton is just awesome. Like that, those first like 8 with Isaiah McGuire, like man, those first 8 picks are like just so they're a home. That's a home run, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean you're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, at least probably 5 starters.
Yeah, for sure.
First 5 picks. I mean, maybe that says more about the lack of talent on the Bears than anything. But
that is why we did what we did. Like that's why we'll trade back and try and add more picks because the Bears, there's enough. There isn't enough competition across that roster right now where like there isn't a single position group where you can't add competition and feel good about it. Maybe the receiver, being that our first and second receiver are now our second and third best receiver, and we did re-sign Equanimous. I mean, re-signed Dante Pettis today, but adding Tyler Scott at that spot is so awesome. Like, if the Bears did this draft, man, I would come out ecstatic.
Yeah, I mean, Tyler Scott. I mean, he also has experience on special teams too, and that's what he'll play. I mean, he's probably not going to see the field much as a receiver year one, but he's a guy you feel more comfortable letting, Claypool walk next year, or maybe or Velus Jones, cutting Velus Jones after this year, depending on how he develops. If you have a guy like Tyler Scott, so
Velus Jones, I didn't even mention him. That's kind of where he's at right now, isn't it?
yeah. I still believe.
Okay, but offensive line got Wanya Morris and Paris Johnson. Added my favorite center in the draft, and added Chandler Zavia as a late round addition. Man, I think that's awesome. The edge. Listen, it'll be hard for the Bears to address the edge exactly how they want to this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think
our weakest position group on defense last year. You could maybe say defensive interior, but man, there wasn't a single quality starter on the defensive edge position on the team.
Yeah, I mean, the Bears are going to come out of this draft, and there'll be one position where we're like, oh, I wish we would address that higher, but they just won't be able to. If you go tackle, D line, and then cornerback, your edge is going to be. Is not going to be great, but if you go edge instead of defensive line, then your defensive line is not going to be great.
Yeah.
So you're going to come away where you're thinking one position is not going to be very good, but we just don't know what position that is going to be.
Being as happy as we are in the offensive line probably comes at the expense of having those question marks at edge. But we said that going into the offseason. I did a whole piece on why you can almost sacrifice some resources to other positions to make sure that we hit it hard at the offensive line position in the draft.
For sure.
Cool.
All right. Cool. Anything else?
I think that's good. I think we fixed the Bears. We'll send this off to Poles. Make sure that he knows it's on his radar.
Yep. Kevin Warren just started today. This will be on his desk first thing tomorrow morning. I think we're good. So we're planning on doing another podcast Wednesday. Might do it live. We're going to be breaking down our cornerbacks and wide receivers, kind of like we did last week with our trench offensive line, defensive line.
Probably the last real group. Those are the last groups of the positions that Poles and Eberflus has said they consider those premium positions. So the ones that we'll make sure we put our focus into.
Yep. So we're going to do that on Wednesday. Maybe we'll go live. Maybe we'll record. I'm not sure yet. And then we'll probably try and go live 2 times next week before the draft. And then we'll also be live day 2 of the draft, not day 1. But we will be live day 2, maybe day 3. I don't know.
Day 2 will be a big day for us too. Expecting that we'll do some trading down if we don't just stay at that pick at number 9 and take a Paris Johnson and Carter. We're going to have 3 or 4 kicks at the can in the second round, and then another pick in the third round too. So lots to be done on that second day. So tune in when that comes.
Definitely. And we'll talk to everyone on Wednesday. Bear down, everyone.
All right. Bear down.